Hello everyone. I hope that each one of you is having a wonderful summer so far. We have just finished that absolutely crazy and transformative heat-alone magnetic peak in which the magnetic spiral of our planetary Merkaba fields reached its peak of the spin, which happens every year between the 8th and 15th of August. And I must say that has been a very transformative time for myself and for many people that I know. A lot of very interesting changes happening in the collective planetary field. And that's why I decided to record this video today and talk about something that I think each one of us should have a certain level of awareness of. And this will be the topic of the womb space. And that actually doesn't concern only women, that concerns all the genders, because all of us had our beginning in the womb. And that aspect of our experience, pretty much the beginning of our embodiment, brings a lot of interesting subjects into our attention that are linked to the emotional body as well as the inner child, our subconscious mind, all these things that we may think that are an important part of our journey, but sometimes we may not be quite sure how to approach them. So here comes the topic of the womb space and how some of our emotional issues or like the inner child traumas that are still affecting us until this very day may actually have the core in the womb. So this is something that I would like to speak about today because I will be organizing an event with a friend of mine. Her name is Anastasia Townsend. Maybe some of you know her, and she's like a sacred birthing mentor and energy practitioner as well. And we decided to speak about the motherhood and how is that also linked into like the womb space and how in these times of many planetary changes and transformations, how we should approach the subject of motherhood in a very conscious way. So, in order to make this subject a little bit more familiar to everyone, I wanted us to take a look at what that womb space is to begin with from the energetic perspective, and what can we expect when we start to look into that subject. Because there's so many aspects of it that we may not be aware of, at least not on a conscious level. So again, it's kind of linked with that ability to like sense it, find it, and consciously transform it. So I will be talking about a couple of examples today, and hopefully that will be also something that you will find helpful on your own transformational spiritual journey. So as usual, I am going to share the screen and show you this presentation about the womb space as the sacred temple of life, because this is something that that I actually was working on like almost a year ago. I released that material on my plasma regenesis classes. It was a part of this series about embodiment of the divine masculine and divine feminine. And the womb space was like a separate class about it. So I picked a couple of slides that I think would be like the most basic and the most important when it comes to understanding that subject a little bit deeper. So before I get into what the womb space is to begin with, let's take a look at the subject of the 8-cell cluster and the quantum of the incarnating identity, because this is something that is actually very much connected to the womb space. And I'm pretty sure I was talking about it a little bit when I posted a video about the inner child healing a couple of months back. Maybe some of you remember it. We were talking about the 8-cell cluster and how that ancestral imprint comes to being, how we have our own individual traits and how we also have these traits that we inherited after our parents and they got it after their parents, etc., etc. So it's kind of creating like this ancestral chain, like a certain kind of entanglement that we need to resolve as we progress throughout this embodiment. So I will read this and I will explain what that really means, because this is something to be aware of, that like our womb space, which is located in the sacral chakra, just below the navel, um, its main influence is actually the mother, because if we started in the womb of our mother, then in a way, our mother's womb served as a certain blueprint for the manifestation of our own womb space. So this is already like the first influence that you can find. What was the condition of what was actually like happening when you were in your mother's womb? What was like your mother's emotional, mental, energetic condition? And perhaps there is something for you to actually notice there and heal. This is something that is often also appearing as one of the earliest inner child wounds, so to speak. Anyway, let's take a look at the 8-cell cluster. The primordial structure of the personal 8-cell cluster is created within the first 12 hours after the conception point, under organic circumstances. Once the Vabati cell, the first cell composed of the united quantum of both parents, comes into being, the incarnating spirit essence begins the process of spiritualization of its slowly expanding fetal body, using the quantum of the Vabati cell to continue its growth. This process, that usually takes about 33 up to 56 days, allows for preparing the fetal body for full union with the incarnating spirit. In order to make it happen, the incarnating spirit essence begins adjusting encryption of the fetal body with its own personal coding. So that means that once the conception point takes place, at first the spirit is kind of like connecting to the body in order to start like preparing it for like later directly tethering into it. But this is almost like it's called the spiritualization process. So like the spirit begins that work to like let's say upgrade the frequency of the fetal body and match it to the frequency of its DNA template, but it is not quite tethered yet. That fetal integration tethering process is taking place about 33 up to 56 days after conception. Sometimes a spirit may choose to wait until the moment of birth, and then directly like enter the body. But these are very rare conditions. Usually when a soul is waiting right until the moment of birth, it is usually waiting because it may either feel like its frequencies would be too high for the mother to handle, or it may be under some kind of targeting. So there are different situations here. So when we have that birth of the 8-cell cluster, the 8-cell cluster that is later serving as that divine blueprint for health of the body, where each one of these 8 cells of that cluster is holding the blueprint for a certain system in our body. Like, if I remember correctly, cell number 8, which is right in the center, is holding the blueprint for the nervous system. Then cell 7 is holding it for the immune system, etc., etc. All of these are basically influenced by a couple of things. And now here is like a list of these main influences. Like, what is this? What type of quantum is the 8-cell cluster composed of? In the structure of the primordial 8-cell cluster, which sets the divine blueprint for health in the body, we can find 4 main forces that have the main impact on the 8-cell cluster and its encryption. We've got 33% quantum of the biological mother, 33% quantum of the biological father, and collectively that 66% creates that ancestral imprint. So this is when the transfer of like any kind of so-called genetic diseases takes place. any kind of like karmic blueprints that may be like later leading to their direct manifestation in the body. That's when all of that gets transferred. And then we have the 33% quantum of the incarnating spirit essence, which involves any kind of like blueprints of the spirit from previous lifetimes, its own quantum that, in a way, throughout the first years of life, you are meant to transmute that 66% quantum of the ancestral imprint, returning it to your parents, and you are progressively meant to embody the remaining 67% of your own spirit essence into the body. This way, usually by the age of 12 and later on by the age of 22, and then that pretty much became impossible to do it within one lifetime until very recently, thanks to the gifts of the eternal host. By a certain age, you are meant to embody the full essence of your soul, meaning that 100% of your quantum, of your own spirit quantum will be in the 8-cell cluster, and this way you will be set free from any ancestral burden or disharmonic karmic imprints that later might be negatively having an impact on your experience. So, having said all that, let's take a look at the womb space and how the womb space is actually connected to this, to the ancestral imprint, the quantum of the spirit, and how all of this is kind of creating like a set of different blueprints that you can find within your womb space. So in a way, just like on this image, your womb space is kind of like a map. It is like a map of your emotional body. And within your womb space, you can spot a lot of interesting patterns that you may not have been fully aware of before. So let's see what is the definition of the womb space, at least from my perspective. The womb space, also known as the cave of the first beginning, due to the fact that our fetal body has started its journey inside of the mother's womb, is the heart of the emotional body located in the sacral chakra below the navel. The womb space represents the memory matrix of one's emotional body, with all the energetic imprints that have been picked up by the emotional body structure stored within this area. So all of our emotions are in the womb, all of the emotions that we are experiencing consciously, and also the ones that we are experiencing subconsciously. And before we get to these different imprints that we can find in the womb space further, let's take a look how the womb space is connected to the inner child. In case some of you don't remember what the inner child is, or you've never heard this term before, I will just quickly read it for you so that you have a certain idea what that is before we get to like a connecting slide about like how that inner child is actually connected to the womb space and like that mother-child bond. The term inner child refers directly to the area of the soul matrix responsible for growth and development of the incarnating spirit essence. That includes the physical growth of the body vessel, but also development and embodiment of the light body structure and its interface with the external holographic reality. Inner child quantum is progressively uploaded and accreted until age 33, when the entirety of the personal spirit essence quantum should be fully integrated. So basically, inner child is a tangible aspect of our soul. And it is that aspect of our essence that is responsible not just like for the physical growth, but also like it is almost like the foundation upon which our emotional body structures build. So if there are any emotional body disbalances, the first thing that I'm usually checking is the inner child, because that's when all of our, that's basically where our that's the very moment when our nervous system is going through its main development. So if there are any traumas that are like distorting the energy flows within the nervous system, that is creating reversals, that is creating distortions, and also actual fragmentations within the inner child structure. So let's see what is the connection between the womb space and the inner child. An incarnating consciousness begins its journey inside of the womb space of the biological mother, picking up all the emotional, mental imprints that exist there, and using the mother's womb as a template for the future creation and organization of the personal womb space. This energetic relationship between the mother and child creates the energy dynamic in which the incarnating identity picks up various emotional, mental, biological imprints that manifest within the structure of the epigenetic overlay and later serve as programs or instructions for further development of the biological or biochemical DNA. This means that many of the distortions in the physical, emotional, mental configuration of the child come from the imprints that have been originally passed on through the womb space, commonly shared by a mother and a child. And the main interface throughout which this transfer of emotional, mental, energetic imprints is taking place, and also biological ones, is the umbilical cord. The umbilical cord that is bonding the mother and the child together. And whenever a child is basically like receiving a certain imprint from the mother, it is all getting saved in its cellular memory. That's why energetic protection during pregnancy is highly recommended. For example, bringing in the rainbow plasma energies from the Nomi seed, circulating them through your body, but also like if a woman is pregnant, she should also create like a rainbow plasma bubble around the child or like around her womb in order to make it a sacred and safe temple pretty much for the child while it is going through various stages of its development. So there is that direct interaction, energy exchange between the mother and the child. It is the strongest when during the pregnancy period, but then it is also very, very strong until the age of 6 when the child is let's say, growing its light body structures, developing its bioenergetic system. And in a way, it is using the mother's bioenergetic system as a certain blueprint upon which it will create its own energetic configuration. This energy pattern that we can see, that interaction that occurs between the womb space, like between the mother and the child, indicates that the energy exchange that occurs within the womb space has a significant impact on embodiment of the inner child. The inner child is the very first aspect of the soul matrix that begins the process of integration already during the fetal period. As I said, the earliest traumas in this lifetime may start already in the womb. They don't have to. If you had a mother that was, let's say, either like maybe dormant on the 3D level, but like very conscious when she was pregnant. But if there was a different situation where there's been like a lot of emotional issues or the mother is rejecting the child but still decides to give birth, that is creating a very difficult beginning for the child, and that creates like a certain trauma that gets saved within the inner child imprint. And later, this is something that such soul later needs to integrate within herself or himself, because if this is not healed, if that traumatic imprint remains, it's going to progressively lead to more and more traumas manifesting in its own external holographic experience. So sometimes the reason why certain things are not working out in our lives, well, you would have to date it back all the way to the beginning of this incarnation and how it looked like. So it is important to look at that, let's say, chapter 1 of our contemporary Earth embodiment, because it does carry a lot of things that we may want to heal within ourselves. So sometimes we may not remember all of these things, and obviously, like, I would say that most of us, I mean, some of us are born like with the memory, like as a soul, like who we were before, and like how did that process of embodiment into this incarnation go for us. But many of us don't remember this, right? We don't remember the moment when we were inside of our mother's wombs. We don't remember that birthing moment, and we don't remember the first few years of our childhood either. However, all of these imprints are within our subconscious mind. There is this certain theory in psychology or psychoanalysis that our mind is like an iceberg. Most of the things that we are processing is on a subconscious level. Well, I also divide it into the conscious and, I mean, like the unconscious and subconscious. So these are like the two different layers, and then we have the conscious mind and the overconscious, but I will not be getting into that today. However, I do agree with that iceberg theory. It's just, I would say that our conscious mind is maybe like 0.2%, and then the rest is that subconscious and unconscious mind layers. Not even mentioning the overconscious, but basically the things that we are not aware of at the moment. So I'm going to read this so that we have like a certain idea how the subconscious mind is connected to the womb space. Let's keep in mind that our mental body, which is like on dimension 3, this is our conscious mind. This is what we are aware of. Like when you are right now watching this video and analyzing what I'm saying and trying to like connect it to the things that you already know, this is something that is naturally happening in your mental body structure, and you're aware of it. You're consciously picking up on it. But there are also, like, as you're watching this video, there's also like all sorts of sets of associations that you are not processing consciously. Like you're looking at this image of the iceberg, and maybe it's subconsciously reminding you of something, but you're not quite aware what that is, but it's still there. So the subconscious mind corresponds to dimension 2, and it corresponds to the emotional body. And since the womb space is like the heart of the emotional body, then in a way, this is also where we have that station of our subconscious mind within the womb. And interestingly enough, that connecting medium, like if you have that subconscious mind, which is usually like on the back of the head, the connecting medium is the vagus nerve that that creates like a direct interface between the womb space and the subconscious mind on the back of the head. So even though the vagus nerve is running on reversal right now, this is only kind of showing us that there's certain emotional processes that are also like being naturally distorted on the energetic level because of the metatronic distortions that we are holding. But anyway, let's see what is the connection. As the incarnating essence goes through childhood and adulthood, progressively shaping its identity and discovering itself, its womb space is the one that serves as a literal compass throughout this journey. All the imprints brought in by the incarnating spirit from other lifetimes, ancestral imprint picked up from the energy field of both parents and the experiences from the current lifetime, especially early childhood, serve as the main factors that determine its identity, emotional intelligence, and the ability to make personal choices. About 98% of these imprints are located within the subharmonics of the D2 subconscious mind that corresponds to the emotional body layer. There isn't one way to decode the womb space imprints. Usually it is a process that takes a long time and often includes going through various experiences in the structure of the 3D externalized hologram to consciously remember and transmute these energy imprints. And something that I will be sharing probably during that motherhood event is how to actually access that womb space and consciously start healing all these different distortions that may be there. So let's take a look at the most common imprints in the womb space. I divided them into three main categories. The first one comes from the personal spirit quantum. So it's that 33% in your 8-cell cluster. We have the past lifetimes, spirit wounds, past life partners, and the last incarnation. We have the imprints coming from the ancestral imprint. The ancestral influence mother-father wounds, like their emotional traumas that they may have transferred on to the child. Mother's condition, especially during pregnancy, and other partners that your parents had before you, because they are also having an impact. And this current lifetime, which includes the early childhood sexual partners and the spiritual practices that may be having a certain influence on your womb. So I will analyze each one of these categories, and that should already give you an idea what kind of imprints may be in your own womb space and how to potentially approach them. Let's take a look first at the imprints that are coming from the spirit quantum. So that means like your identity as a spirit, not just like this incarnation, but the awareness of all of your embodiments put together. First of all, we have the past lifetimes, and that includes the cellular memory of all experiences one has gone through during all of its experiences on various timelines, including emotional imprints, traumas, milestones, etc. An identity of an incarnating spirit without any overlays is the sum of all experiences it has gone through in various lifetimes. So that basically means that, in a way, the personality that you hold in this incarnation is not determined by your astrological zodiac sign or anything like this. The way that you are in this lifetime is kind of like a direct consequence of all of your previous embodiments. So if you hold a lot of like inner strength in this incarnation and you feel like very self-empowered, well, this is a result of the fact that you managed to achieve a lot in previous lifetimes and you know your value. But if you have quite the opposite, if you suffer from like anxiety and you kind of struggle to embody that inner strength and self-esteem, well, that might be a result of the spirit wounds that include severe traumas from past lifetimes that distort the personal, divine, feminine, masculine balance. And on the level of the womb, where, we also have like our reproductive organs and it's also like our sexual space, that may include very heavy imprints, like the imprints of rape, abductions, betrayal, violence, diseases, and traumatic deaths. All of these may be in your womb because all of them are kind of connected to your emotional body space. So that's why there will be there. What also matters are the partners from past lives, and now I'm gonna explain it to those that may not be aware of it. There is a certain phenomenon called telegony, and that basically means that it's actually something like that comes from the Vedic Slavic traditions, where basically for them, just like in many other traditions, it was quite important, like for a woman to be a virgin. And then she would just be with one partner and have children with him. And they were doing that in order to kind of like, make sure that the next generations would be pure. But the real reason behind this is that every person that enters your womb space is basically, and by the way, that doesn't apply only to women. Every single person that you have a sexual interaction with, they get imprinted in your womb space. And that means that they may transfer all sorts of like energetic burden to you, dark flowering, karmic energy imprints. And then that is having a direct impact on your emotional body. This is something that I think I was talking about like many times before, that purifying your womb space allows for emotional body realignment. Without purifying your womb space, it might be challenging for you to find that internal balance. Because if there's like a lot of different imprints in your womb, and by the way, that doesn't have to be only from this lifetime, but if there are like a lot of previous incarnations with like the same trauma of maybe like being being abused as a woman, kind of like that divine feminine essence pretty much being like squeezed, and it never kind of had its own voice. It was just completely shut down. Then in a way, healing all these previous embodiments as well as this lifetime, of course, may allow you to become that voice of your divine feminine once again. So this is something to take into consideration. Once you heal this incarnation, that would be the next step, looking into your previous embodiments. And you may see that the path that you are following in this lifetime, some of your experiences may be the repetition of what happened back in the past, because perhaps you needed to go through a certain experience once again in order to, once and for all, get a certain lesson from it. And something interesting, the last aspect of these imprints that are coming from the spirit quantum is the last incarnation. The last thought or realization before death is almost like an overlay that later shapes following incarnations. The last incarnation is the closest frequency-wise, that's why it is the most influential. And that also has to do with what I said before, that the previous incarnations shape your personality. So, for example, if you were betrayed by someone in your previous lifetime and you kind of like have that very strong thought in that lifetime, like, I will never allow myself to get betrayed again, then you may suffer from trust issues in the next lifetime because of that very strong trauma that appeared in your emotional body, the betrayal, and as a consequence, the lack of trust. So these are these certain patterns that we do need to detect within ourselves. Then we have the influence of the ancestral imprint. So that means our parents. First, we have the ancestral influence, and that includes all traumas, imprints, curses, spells, etc. Everything that comes from the maternal and the paternal family line that are contained within the 8-cell cluster structure of the incarnating identity. So tracing the ancestral patterns is one thing. Then we have the mother or father wounds, and that includes trapped emotional mental imprints of either the mother or father that are especially influential during the fetal development period. I did work once with a client, and she gave birth to her baby a couple of months ago. And ever since then, she's been going through like a lot of stress on many different levels. And what started to happen is that I noticed that there's been like a lot of that stress energy being unconsciously absorbed by the baby. And what happened is that basically the child of that client started to like suffer from like kind of like breathing issues, as if she couldn't take like a full breath because that stress was pretty much stuck in the chest area. So at first, when children are coming to this world, they don't have the full morphogenetic biofield structure developed, and as a consequence, they are more vulnerable to all these different energy imprints to come into their fields. So that's something to keep in mind, that as a conscious mother or a conscious father, be aware of this emotional transfer that might be happening with your children. especially at a very early stage of life. Then we have the mother's condition, and that includes the overall energetic well-being of the mother, the condition of her energy biofield, targeting imprints and levels of the virtues embodiment, as all these factors impact the development of the child's energetic structure. And that is especially important during the pregnancy period. I will be talking more about that on the motherhood event, like what you should be aware of when you are with child, and what kind of energetic measures you can take in order to make sure that this process goes as smooth as possible, and so that you make sure that the next generations don't have to go through the same set of experiences. And the last part of influences are the ones from this lifetime, and that includes the early childhood, which is shaped through the progressive integration and embodiment of the inner child structure. So this is what I talked about before, like how did that pregnancy period, how was it, how was the birth as well, and how these first years of life were, like whether there's certain fragmentations from that period or not. Then we have the sexual partners. That includes all the energy imprints passed on by other people during sexual intercourse. So that's something to also review, because in a way, if you want to have like a pure relationship with someone, almost like a twin flame union, then it is good to clear all the sexual partners you may have been with before and notice any kind of impact that they may have had on you in that regards. And finally, we have the spiritual practices, and that includes various spiritual teachings that may modify the structure of the sacral or the womb space, and that includes the Reiki, Kabbalah, all these different spiritual practices that are especially focused on the Kundalini activation. They usually create the reversal of these life force currents and kind of reinforcement of the yin-yang overlay within the womb. So in the last slides, I will show you a couple of more information about the pregnancy and the mother-child relationship, and how that intimate bond um, is actually a beautiful co-creation. Like, let's just put all these other distortions aside and let's look at how how that period of time is actually meant to be a beautiful co-creation, where the mother's womb actually becomes that sacred temple of life. One of the main factors that later shapes the rest of life of the incarnating identity and its ability to integrate the inner child is the period of pregnancy and early childhood until the age of 6. At the moment of the conception point, the mother and father's energies merge, creating the Vabati cell that enables growth of the fetal body, until the spirit completes the fetal integration process, progressively embodying more of its own spirit quantum that gives the fetal body the individual traits different from its biological parents. The process of fetal integration may be disturbed by the incompatibility in the mother-father merged quantum, which often leads to miscarriage, or the fetal body may get snatched through an impostor being, a twisted elemental consciousness. So this is something to be aware of, and this is also part of the spiritual hygiene that needs to be applied in order to avoid such cases where very often if a mother holds like a very high frequency field, there might be different entities that may want to latch onto her womb space to try to sabotage that the pregnancy period itself. And I will be also talking more on that event about like fertility and kind of like that compatibility between the mother and father, because the reason why two people cannot make a child sometimes is actually a result of the lack of compatibility between their DNA templates. And now that may be something that can be cleared, or that is just a matter of the fact that they are not compatible enough to make it happen. So this is like something that is also worth looking into. The first 33 days after the conception point are the most important, since they provide a suitable environment for the spirit to later complete its full integration by tethering to the body. Once the fetal integration process begins, the incarnating spirit already starts to interact with the womb space of the biological mother. Energies of the incarnating spirit are usually very gentle and sensitive in the beginning, so providing a peaceful, nurturing environment is one of the key tasks for the mother that may subconsciously sense the loving energies of the spirit and experience them as motherhood instinct. Or a mother may feel that type of instinct even before getting pregnant, because it is a matter of these pre-incarnational agreements. So like the soul of the mother and the soul of the child may have a contract with each other for like an incarnation. And the mother may be feeling that, like on the 3D level, as the motherhood instinct, that she wants to have a child because of that contract that was made on the higher dimensional levels, usually between the two souls. Throughout the pregnancy period, the mother's energy field serves as a protection field for the fetal body and the incarnating spirit that progressively births the 12D light body structure. Curses, spells put on the mother, or entities trying to get to the mother's field are the main dangers for the incarnating spirit that usually doesn't hold enough quantum to be able to manage the interference. All the ancestral imprints, as well as trapped emotional mental imprints and other environmental factors, shape both the physical and energetic development of the fetal body. After 9 months of pregnancy, for the first 2 years, the child is fully under the protection of its mother. This protection is progressively built up through the breastfeeding process, during which the mother passes on the codes for the bioenergetic configuration of the auric fields, as well as its emotional ancestral imprints. If the child was not breastfed, it may come across difficulty with keeping its energy field stable and may suffer from immune system difficulties. Throughout the first 6 years of development, the incarnating identity remains open to the astral field and directly interacts with it. This connection allows for bringing in the higher dimensional frequencies to accelerate the process of cellular growth. This circuit progressively closes until the 12th year of age due to the planetary net field mutation, manifesting as a split in the 4th DNA strand into lower and higher astral consciousness. This circuit may be shut down earlier due to abductions, childhood traumas, or religious seals, for example, baptism. So it is important to make sure that your child remains in that purity as long as possible, like energetic-wise, in context of making sure that none of these procedures, like any kind of religious rituals or ceremonies, are going to shut down any of these higher energetic circuits. So this is everything that I wanted to share with you in this video. I invite any of the conscious mothers to sign up for the event that will be hosted on the 30th of August. This is a space for conscious mothers, mothers-to-be, and women who carry the codes of creation within them to awaken, align, and reclaim the sacred art of mothering as a spiritual path. You can check out more details here on my website. You will also find that link under the video in the description. And I will be happy to be able to share whatever comes to me. The transmissions that I have been receiving about the conscious motherhood for this event have been very, very interesting, and they brought a lot of that very deep awareness, how the art of divine feminine in a way is all about manifestation and manifesting this new life into creation. So having said all of that, thank you for listening to this video. I do hope that you enjoyed it and that it brought you some deeper inner realizations that you can apply to your further inner work. And I suppose I will see some of you on the online event. So thank you for listening, and until the next time. Bye bye.